The massive Imperial scout ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Its dark hull gleamed against the starlit backdrop as it slowly approached the third planet from the Sun. Inside the vessel's command center, Captain Robert Wilson of the Earth Defense Force watched the recorded footage with growing concern. "They've been watching us for 3 months," he said, addressing the United Earth Council. The emergency meeting had brought together military leaders from every major nation. The screening room was tense with anticipation. The Imperial scout ship's transmissions, which Earth's best code breakers had finally deciphered, painted a troubling picture. The aliens spoke of Earth with dismissive amusement, describing the planet's defenses as charmingly prehistoric. "Their technology is at least 3 centuries ahead of ours," Admiral Thomas explained, pointing to the holographic display showing the Imperial ship's capabilities. "Their smallest scout vessel could probably take on our entire orbital defense network." A murmur of worried voices filled the room. Earth's combined military forces had always seemed impressive. Thousands of satellites, nuclear arsenals, and advanced fighter jets. But compared to the Empire's antimatter weapons and energy shields, they might as well have been throwing stones. The room fell silent as the main screen displayed new footage. A massive Imperial diplomatic vessel had entered the solar system, its size dwarfing anything humans had ever built. The ship's message was clear. They came in peace, offering Earth protection in exchange for resources. "Protection from what?" General Adams asked, his weathered face tight with suspicion. "The only threat we see is them." The Imperial ambassador, who called himself High Lord William, a name chosen to sound familiar to humans, had requested a meeting with Earth's leaders in 3 days. His preliminary message was polite, but carried an unmistakable undertone of superiority. "They think we're children playing with toys," Colonel Jackson said, reviewing the decoded Imperial communications. "Their internal messages mock our quaint nuclear deterrence and primitive satellite system." But something about the Empire's attitude bothered Captain Wilson. He had spent years studying military history, and one lesson stood out. Underestimating your opponent was often the first step toward defeat. "Their arrogance might be our advantage," he suggested, standing up to address the council. "They see our technology as obsolete, but they're judging us by their standards. We should let them keep thinking that way." Admiral Thomas nodded slowly, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "You're suggesting we play into their expectations." "Exactly," Wilson replied. "Let them think we're the primitive species they expect us to be. Meanwhile, we prepare in ways they won't expect." The council spent the next hours developing their strategy. They would present a united but seemingly technologically inferior front to the Empire. Earth's leaders would appear appropriately awed by Imperial technology, while gathering every piece of intelligence they could. As the meeting concluded, Captain Wilson stayed behind, studying the Imperial ship's scans. Something caught his eye, a pattern in their shield modulation that seemed oddly familiar. He made a note to have Earth scientists look into it. 3 days later, as the Imperial diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere in a deliberate display of power, the planet's leaders gathered in Geneva. They wore their best diplomatic faces, ready to play their roles as an impressed but dignified primitive civilization. High Lord William's arrival was calculated to intimidate. His personal shield shimmed with rainbow colors, and his uniform seemed to bend light itself. But Captain Wilson, standing among Earth's honor guard, noticed something crucial. The Empire's representatives never once looked at the primitive weapons the humans carried. Their greatest weakness, Wilson realized, wasn't in their superior technology. It was in their absolute certainty that they had nothing to fear from Earth. They were about to learn how wrong they were. High Lord William strode through the United Earth Council's main hall, his boots making no sound on the polished floor. The Empire's technology even made walking silent, a detail that didn't escape Admiral Thompson's careful observation. The Admiral sat at the massive oak conference table, watching the Imperial delegation showcase their technological might. They had brought what they called simple demonstrations, devices that could create food from thin air, heal injuries instantly, and generate force fields strong enough to withstand a nuclear blast. As you can see, High Lord William said, his voice smooth and practiced, the Empire's protection would greatly benefit Earth. Your world faces so many challenges. He paused, looking at the Earth's representatives with what seemed like genuine pity. Thompson maintained a carefully neutral expression. Behind him, screens displayed Earth's military capabilities, a presentation the Empire had requested. They showed missile silos, aircraft carriers, and satellite networks. With each image, the Imperial officers exchanged knowing smiles. Most impressive, William said, in a tone one might use to praise a child's crayon drawing. Your civilization has progressed remarkably far, given your limitations. The meeting continued for hours. The Empire displayed more of their advanced technology, each demonstration more impressive than the last. But Thompson noticed something interesting. They always used the same type of energy field for their shields. During a break, Thompson retreated to a secure room with Dr. Linda Hall, Earth's leading physicist. "Did you see it?" he asked, pulling up footage of the Imperial shields. "Yes," she replied, her eyes bright with excitement. "They use a single frequency for everything. It's more advanced than anything we have. But it's all they have," Thompson finished. "One system, no backup." They were interrupted by the return of the Imperial delegation. This time, High Lord William had brought what he called a gift, a small Imperial defense drone. "To demonstrate our goodwill," he explained, "and to help you understand the protection we offer." The drone floated in the center of the room, its shield glowing softly. William invited Earth's scientists to study it, clearly expecting them to be baffled by its complexity. Dr. Hall approached the drone, scanner in hand. She played the part perfectly, gasping at appropriate moments and asking basic questions that made the Imperial officers smile condescendingly. But her scanner was gathering critical data about the shield's energy pattern. "Remarkable," she breathed, her voice filled with artificial awe. "We've never seen anything like it." That evening, after the Imperial delegation had returned to their ship, Thompson met with Earth's top military and scientific minds in a heavily shielded underground facility. The data from Dr. Hall's scanner filled the screens around them. "Their shields operate on a predictable pattern," she explained, pointing to the energy wavelengths. "Advanced, yes, but inflexible. They haven't needed to develop alternatives because nothing they've encountered can penetrate them." "Until now?" Thompson asked. Dr. Hall smiled. "Their shields are like a wall, an incredibly strong wall, but just a wall. We've been thinking about defense differently. Our primitive systems are layered, redundant, adaptable." Thompson turned to the assembled leaders. "They expect us to be impressed by their technology, to be grateful for their protection, and we'll let them think that. Meanwhile, Dr. Hall continued, we'll develop something they won't expect, something primitive by their standards, but effective precisely because of that." As the meeting concluded, Thompson received word that the Empire had begun positioning their fleet at the edge of the solar system. They were clearly preparing for Earth's inevitable acceptance of their generous offer. "Let them think we're beaten before we begin," Thompson told his staff. "Their greatest weakness isn't their shield frequency or their tactical inflexibility. It's their absolute certainty that they've already won." As he looked at the star-filled sky that night, Thompson allowed himself a small smile. The Empire had no idea that their greatest military embarrassment would come at the hands of a civilization they considered barely worth conquering. The real assessment wasn't their evaluation of Earth. It was Earth's evaluation of them. And they had failed. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility unknown to the Empire, Dr. Hall stood before a wall of screens. Each one showed a different test of Earth's new defense system. The room buzzed with activity as scientists and engineers worked around the clock. "Show me the results again," Thompson said, walking into the laboratory. Dark circles under his eyes revealed sleepless nights, but his voice remained sharp and clear. Dr. Hall pressed a button, and a small drone, similar to the Empire's gift, floated into a sealed chamber. Its shield glowed with the same rainbow pattern as all Imperial technology. On another platform sat what looked like an old television antenna. "Watch this," she said, activating the antenna. The drone's shield flickered once, twice, then vanished completely. The drone dropped to the ground with a clang. "A simple electromagnetic pulse," Dr. Hall explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "Modified to match their shield frequency. Their technology is so advanced that they've forgotten about the basics of wave interference." Thompson nodded, allowing himself a small smile. "How many of these can we make?" "That's the best part," Dr. Hall replied, leading him to another room. Inside, thousands of old satellites parts lay organized on long tables. "We're repurposing our obsolete equipment. The Empire won't suspect a thing. They think these are just space junk." Across the globe, similar scenes played out in hidden facilities. In underground bunkers, engineers modified old radar stations. At sea, submarines carried special equipment to abandoned oil platforms. Every piece of outdated technology became part of Earth's secret weapon. The Empire, meanwhile, grew more confident by the day. Their ships moved closer to Earth, taking positions that would allow them to protect the planet. They never noticed that each piece of space debris they passed had been carefully positioned. In orbit, Imperial Captain Allen watched Earth with growing boredom. His massive ship's sensors showed nothing but primitive satellites and space junk. "How much longer must we wait?" he asked during a routine communication with High Lord William. "Patience," William replied. "Let them feel the pressure of our presence. Soon they'll beg for our protection." But Earth wasn't begging. Earth was building. In the mountain facility, Thompson met with military leaders from around the world. The room's center held a holographic display of Earth and the surrounding Imperial ships. "The network is almost ready," Thompson explained. "Every satellite, radar station, and platform is in position. The Empire thinks they're watching us, but we've been watching them." A junior officer raised his hand. "Sir, what if they detect our modifications?" Thompson smiled. "They're not looking for anything primitive. Their scans are designed to detect advanced energy signatures. Our equipment is too simple to register." Dr. Hall stepped forward, pointing to the hologram. "We've discovered something else. Their ship's shields work the same way as their smaller devices. One system, one frequency, no backup. They've never needed one before." "And now?" someone asked. "Now they'll learn why humans still teach military history," Thompson replied. "Every great empire in Earth's history fell when they became too confident, too set in their ways. The Empire thinks they're above that lesson." As the meeting ended, Thompson received word that the Empire had called for another demonstration of their power. They planned to showcase their largest ship yet, a display meant to push Earth toward accepting their terms. "Perfect timing," Thompson said. He turned to Dr. Hall. "Are we ready?" She nodded. "Everything is in place. The whole network can be activated with a single command." Thompson looked at the night sky through a nearby window. Somewhere up there, the Empire's ships waited, their crews probably laughing at Earth's primitive defenses. They had no idea that those same primitive devices had been transformed into a weapon they couldn't imagine. "Let them come," Thompson said quietly. "Let them show us their biggest ship, their strongest shields. It's time they learned why humans never put all their trust in a single system." The Empire's greatest show of force was about to become their greatest embarrassment, and they wouldn't even see it coming. The Imperial flagship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a metal mountain. Its massive hull blocked out the sun over Geneva, casting a shadow that stretched for miles. High Lord William had chosen this moment carefully, a show of force that would finally convince Earth to submit. "Magnificent, isn't it?" William asked the assembled Earth leaders. His voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who knew they'd already won. "This ship alone could protect your entire planet." Thompson stood among Earth's representatives, watching the enormous vessel with apparent awe. In his ear, a tiny communicator crackled. "Network is ready, sir," Dr. Hall's voice whispered. "Waiting for your signal." The Imperial flagship hung impossibly in the air, its shields creating a rainbow dome visible for miles. Smaller Imperial ships took position around it, forming a pattern that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so threatening. "Your final choice," William announced. "Accept our protection, or—" He let the threat hang in the air, gesturing at the armada above. Thompson stepped forward. Every eye in the room turned to him. "We have a response prepared," he said calmly. He pressed a hidden button in his pocket. "In fact, we'd like to show you something." At first, nothing seemed to happen. William's smile remained fixed, slightly amused. Then the flagship's shield flickered. William's smile faltered. "A minor fluctuation," he said, reaching for his communicator. But before he could speak, every Imperial shield in the sky began to pulse and wave like disturbed water. "Impossible," an Imperial officer whispered. Thompson's voice cut through the growing chaos. "You call our technology primitive. You mocked our satellites as space junk. Would you like to know what primitive really means?" Above them, the massive flagship's shield suddenly vanished. The smaller ships around it followed suit, their protective barriers disappearing like soap bubbles. Panic erupted among the Imperial officers as their personal shields failed too. "What have you done?" William demanded, his composed mask cracking. "We learned from history," Thompson replied. "While you were laughing at our old satellites, we were modifying them. Simple electromagnetic pulses, tuned exactly to your shield frequency. Primitive, yes, but effective." The Imperial ships hung naked in the sky, their most advanced defense stripped away by technology they had dismissed as worthless. Emergency sirens wailed across the fleet. "You can't," William started, but alarms from the flagship interrupted him. The mighty vessel's engines were failing, its complex systems disrupted by waves of carefully tuned electromagnetic energy. "We can," Thompson corrected him. "And we did. Your shields are impressive, but they all work the same way. One system, no backup. We have thousands of different systems, layers of technology you thought were too simple to be dangerous." The flagship began to drift, its anti-gravity systems failing. Emergency thrusters fired, barely managing to prevent a catastrophic fall. Around it, smaller ships scrambled to maintain position, their crews discovering too late what happens when you rely too heavily on a single type of defense. "This is impossible," William repeated, watching his mighty fleet flounder in the sky. "We are the Empire. You are primitive." "Primitive doesn't mean stupid," Thompson replied. "While you were showing off your advanced technology, we were studying its weaknesses. Every satellite you ignored, every radar station you dismissed, we turned them all into weapons you never saw coming." The Imperial flagship retreated higher into the atmosphere, trailing emergency power signatures. Other ships followed, their formations broken, their crews struggling with systems that had never operated without shield protection. As the Empire's greatest show of force turned into a desperate withdrawal, Thompson turned to William. "You offered to protect us from the galaxy, but ask yourself, who's going to protect the galaxy from us?" William had no answer. He stared at the retreating ships, at the primitive planet that had just brought the mighty Empire to its knees, and for the first time in his life, he felt something he never expected to feel while facing a lesser civilization. Fear. The Empire's ships hung in high orbit, their shields still dead. Emergency repair crews worked frantically to restore their defenses, but Earth wasn't going to give them time to recover. "Launch Operation Swarm," Thompson ordered from the underground command center. On screens around him, thousands of small dots began moving from Earth's surface toward space. "What are those?" William demanded, now held in a simple concrete room. Through a small window, he could see the swarm rising. "More of your primitive weapons." "Drones," Thompson replied. remote-controlled aircraft that cost less than one of your shield generators. We have thousands of them. The Imperial fleet's advanced targeting systems were designed to track large energy signatures, not small, simple machines. As the swarm approached, their weapons struggled to lock onto the tiny targets. 15 minutes until drone contact, Dr. Hall announced, monitoring the attack. The Empire's ships are trying to retreat, but their engines are still compromised. In space, Imperial Captain Allen watched in horror as the cloud of Earth machines approached his crippled fleet. "They're everywhere," he shouted into the fleet communication system. "How do we stop them?" But the Empire's weapons were too advanced for their own good. Built to destroy massive ships and penetrate energy shields, they couldn't track the small, agile drones. It was like trying to swat flies with a sword. The first wave of drones reached the Imperial ships. Each drone carried a simple explosive charge, primitive by Empire standards, but devastating against unshielded hulls. Explosions bloomed across the fleet as drone after drone found its mark. "Impossible," an Imperial officer whispered, watching Earth's attack through the command center's windows. "We are the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. How can this be happening?" Thompson answered, his voice calm. "You forgot the basics of warfare while chasing technological advancement. Sometimes a stone can do what a laser cannot." More Earth weapons joined the attack. Modified missiles, designed to look like outdated models, carried electromagnetic pulse generators instead of warheads. Each explosion disabled more Imperial systems. "Their engines are failing," Dr. Hall reported. "The electromagnetic pulses are cascading through their power systems. They never designed backup systems because their shields always protected them." The Empire's mighty fleet began to fall apart. Some ships managed emergency jumps to hyperspace, while others drifted helplessly. The few that tried to fight back found their advanced targeting computers overwhelmed by the sheer number of small, simple attackers. "Second wave launching," Thompson announced. This time, Earth's regular military forces joined the attack. Fighter jets, dismissed by the Empire as atmospheric toys, rose to engage the remaining ships. Without shields, the Imperial vessels were vulnerable to even conventional weapons. William watched in stunned silence as his fleet was decimated by weapons he had mocked days earlier. "Stop this," he pleaded. "The Empire will give you anything you want." "We don't want anything from you," Thompson replied. "We just want you to understand something. Technology isn't just about advancement. It's about adaptation. You forgot that lesson. We never did." The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, half the Imperial fleet had fled, and the other half floated dead in orbit. Earth's simple weapons, combined with electromagnetic attacks, had accomplished what no advanced civilization had ever managed. In the command center, Dr. Hall handed Thompson a final report. "No Earth casualties," she said. "Their weapons were too sophisticated to target our forces effectively. They never expected to fight anything primitive." Thompson looked at the remains of the Imperial fleet through a satellite feed. "Send a message to any Imperial ships still in range," he ordered. "Tell them Earth is now a restricted zone. Any future incursions will be met with the same response." As the message was sent, William finally understood the Empire's fatal mistake. They had spent so long being the most advanced civilization that they'd forgotten a crucial truth. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. And Earth, it seemed, was full of simple solutions. The Imperial Council chamber fell silent as the battle footage played on the massive screen. Dozens of high-ranking officials watched in horror as their mighty fleet was destroyed by what they had called primitive weapons. Some covered their faces, others wept openly. A sight never before seen in this ancient hall. "Impossible," the Grand Commander whispered, his voice shaking. "We lost half our third fleet to toys." William stood before them, his once proud uniform now wrinkled from his time in Earth's simple prison. "They are not what we thought," he said, his voice hollow. "We made a terrible mistake." The footage continued, showing swarms of small drones overwhelming Imperial ships, electromagnetic pulses shutting down their most advanced systems, and simple missiles striking their unshielded hulls. Each scene brought fresh gasps of dismay from the Council. "Our casualties?" someone asked. 3,000 dead, William replied. 5,000 wounded. 12 ships destroyed. 15 more damaged beyond repair. All because we. His voice cracked. All because we were too proud to see the truth. In another part of the galaxy, Imperial news networks struggled to explain the disaster. How could the mighty Empire, with technology centuries ahead of Earth, suffer such a devastating defeat? The stories spread from world to world, carrying with it a shocking message. Advanced technology wasn't everything. Back on Earth, Thompson watched the diplomatic messages pour in from the Empire, each one more desperate than the last, begging for peace talks, offering concessions, pleading for Earth to share its secret weapons. "They still don't understand," Dr. Hall said, reading the messages. "They think we must have some advanced technology they didn't detect." Thompson nodded. "They can't accept that old satellites and simple drones defeated their fleet. It goes against everything they believe about technological progress." More reports arrived from space. The Empire had withdrawn all forces from Earth's solar system. Their mighty ships, once positioned to dominate Earth, now fled from what they called the primitive threat. In the Imperial Palace, the Emperor himself reviewed the battle data. His hands trembled as he watched Earth's counterattack unfold again and again. "My predecessors started this policy," he said to his advisors, "judging worlds by their technology level, offering protection to those we thought primitive. Now look at us, brought to our knees by the very weapons we mocked." The Empire's military commanders faced harsh questions. Why had they never developed backup systems? Why did every ship use the same shield frequency? Why had they become so dependent on a single technology? "Because we were arrogant," William answered during the inquiry. "We thought advancement only moved in one direction. Earth taught us differently. Their strength wasn't in their weapons, but in their thinking." Earth's victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Other worlds that the Empire had dismissed as primitive began studying Earth's tactics. The message was clear. Simple didn't mean weak, and advanced didn't mean invincible. Thompson received a final message from William, sent just before the Empire official left Earth's solar system. "We called you primitive," it read, "but we were the primitive ones. We forgot the most basic lesson of survival. Never underestimate your opponent. Earth will never forget our tears, and we will never forget Earth's lesson." In the months that followed, Earth's defense forces found Imperial data cores from the destroyed ships. They contained detailed records of how the Empire had mocked Earth's technology, laughed at their defenses, and celebrated what they thought would be an easy conquest. "Should we release these to the public?" an aide asked Thompson. "No," he replied, looking out at the night sky where debris from Imperial ships still orbited Earth. "Their tears are enough. Let them keep their dignity. After all," he smiled, "we're not primitive savages." The Empire's greatest defeat became its most important lesson. Sometimes the most advanced civilization isn't the one with the newest technology. It's the one that remembers the value of simplicity. 1 year after Earth's victory, Thompson stood on the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar embassy. The massive space station orbited at the edge of the solar system, built using a clever mix of Earth's primitive technology and captured Imperial engineering. "Admiral Thompson," a young officer called out, "the alien delegations are arriving." Through the station's windows, ships from a dozen different civilizations appeared. Some were as advanced as the Empire's, others much simpler. All had come to learn from the world that had changed the galaxy's balance of power. "Quite different from last year," Dr. Hall said, joining Thompson at the window. She now headed Earth's new Defense Innovation Center, where scientists studied ways to combine old and new technologies. "They're not laughing at our satellites anymore," Thompson replied with a slight smile. The first delegation to dock was from a world called Blue Haven. Their ships looked similar to Earth's old space shuttles. A year ago, the Empire had dismissed them as unworthy of attention. Now they walked proudly through the station's halls. "Your victory gave us hope," their ambassador told Thompson. "We'd spent years trying to copy the Empire's technology. You showed us that our own path might be better." More delegations arrived. Some brought advanced technology to trade, while others sought Earth's expertise in combining simple and complex systems. The station's conference room filled with beings from across the galaxy, all eager to learn from the world that had humbled the mighty Empire. "The Empire's representatives are here," an aide announced. The room fell silent as the Imperial delegation entered. Their uniforms were simpler now, their manner less arrogant. William led them, his face showing newfound respect as he approached Thompson. "Earth's victory changed everything," William said, addressing the gathered aliens. "We thought advancement meant abandoning older technology. Earth proved that true strength comes from combining the old with the new." Thompson stepped forward to sign the Galactic Cooperation Treaty. The document, written on simple paper rather than the Empire's preferred holographic displays, established new rules for technological exchange between worlds. "No civilization shall be judged solely by its technological level," Thompson read from the treaty. "The measure of advancement shall be in innovation, not merely in complexity." The Empire had changed too. Their ships now carried backup systems, their shields operated on multiple frequencies, and their officers studied Earth's military history. Their tears of defeat had washed away centuries of arrogance. Dr. Hall presented the galaxy's first joint research project, a defense system combining Earth's simple electromagnetic pulses with advanced alien energy fields. "The best of both worlds," she explained. "Simple enough to be reliable, advanced enough to be effective." As the delegations mingled, Thompson overheard conversations that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Advanced civilizations eagerly discussed primitive technology, while less developed worlds shared innovations that even the Empire had overlooked. "We got something wrong about humans," William admitted privately to Thompson. "We thought you were trying to catch up to us. Instead, you were building something better, a bridge between the simple and the complex." The observation deck offered a view of Earth in the distance, its orbit now cleared of Imperial debris. Old satellites still circled the planet, but they were no longer disguised as junk. Instead, they stood as reminders that sometimes the best defense isn't the most advanced one. "What happens now?" a young Earth officer asked Thompson. "Now we keep learning," he replied. "From our past, from our present, and from each other. The Empire taught us that technology without wisdom is just expensive junk. Our victory taught them that wisdom sometimes hides in the simplest places." As the day ended, ships from across the galaxy departed the station, each carrying a piece of Earth's lesson. The Empire had come to Earth expecting to find primitives playing with outdated toys. Instead, they had found teachers who reminded the galaxy that true advancement isn't about forgetting your past. It's about building on it. The new dawn had arrived, not just for Earth, but for all civilization, and it began with the simple truth that had made an empire cry: never judge a world by its technology alone.